Oh, hello there. Thanks for joining us. This is, of course, our Martini Masterclass today, wet versus dry. I'm Tim McKirdy, managing editor of VinePair and host of the Cocktail College podcast. And if I can add something unofficial title here, I like to think of myself as a martini aficionado, if not a professional bartender. Definitely not a professional bartender. So what are we here to talk about today? In essence, we're talking about wet versus dry martinis. If you're not a martini drinker, I'm almost sure that beyond the terms shaken, not stirred, or stirred, not shaken, you may have heard the terms wet martini or dry martini. When we're talking about the dryness or wetness of a martini, what we're actually mentioning here is also not what you might expect. But before we get into all of that, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I've got a small ask for you today. Can you join me, myself, and my two martinis here in subscribing to the VinePair YouTube channel? All right, here we go. And I think we may have got a little bit ahead of ourselves when I'm talking about wetness and dryness and martinis. I'm assuming you know what a martini is. It's very likely that you do, but let's bring everyone up to speed. Let's all get on the same page here. Martini, it's the world's most classic cocktail. You look in your phone, you send an emoji to someone, you type cocktail, guess what comes up? It's the martini in the iconic martini glass. We're using Nick and Nora's today. But a martini in essence is London dry gin and dry vermouth. So those are the ingredients, gin and dry vermouth. To call the martini a cocktail, I would say is doing it a little bit of a disservice because the martini is actually a category of cocktails. It's a spectrum of drinks and it's the ultimate customizable cocktail. And that brings us to where we're at today because what you're going to be customizing is how you like the drink served. Yes, of course, you can go shaken versus stirred. Yes, of course, you can opt for vodka. That's not going to be classic, but hey, we're not judging anyone. And honestly, the wet versus dry lesson that we're talking about today, that's still going to apply. So all good there. If you go to any bar and ask for a martini, what the bartender should be serving you is a ratio of 2 ounces of gin to 1 ounce of vermouth. But as I said, this is a customizable drink. It's a spectrum. If 2 to 1 is what we're going to call the middle point there, a standard martini. When I talk about personalization or customization, it's all about moving either side of that spectrum, and that's what gets us into our lesson today. We're all up to speed and we're ready to talk about dry versus wet. Magically, I want us to concentrate on the lesson at hand because there's nothing more interesting than martini lessons, martini masterclass. 2 to 1's our middle point that we established. Dry and wet has nothing to do with the perceived sweetness of the drink. Because as we mentioned, it's a dry vermouth that's being used. It's always going to be a dry drink. So what are we talking about wet versus dry then? In very simple terms, the more vermouth you're including in the recipe, the wetter the drink is getting. The wet martini is going to be lower in total alcohol by volume in ABV. The ABV is going to be a lot lower than our dry martini. So if you want to make a wet martini, here's what you're going to do. We spoke about ratios, but let's talk about technique as well. You're going to start with 1.5 ounces of vermouth in your mixing glass. The gin's going to come next, though, 1.5 ounces of gin. Then you're going to add your ice, stir it, and occasionally give it a taste. And eventually you're going to get a feel for it. You're going to strain it into your glass of choice and you're going to go with your garnish. You'll notice that we went for the lemon twist garnish here, and you see we express the essential oils over it. That's going to immediately, you're going to get those aromas as you take your first sip. You can give it a little, rub on the glass here as well, especially if you get it on the stem. Your hands smell like lemon. It is delicious. It's wonderful. So that's the 50-50 martini. That is your standard wet martini. Dry martinis, this is where things get really interesting. And this is where you see a lot of the customization happening. Personally, would consider a dry martini to start around the 5 to 1 ratio. 2.5 ounces of gin, half an ounce of dry vermouth. You're gonna get more bite of the alcohol, but you shouldn't be able to taste more alcohol. You're gonna get the heat, you're gonna get a searing intensity and concentration of booze, but but you should be able to taste the alcohol. If you can taste that, then you should hand it back to your bartender and tell them that it's slightly under diluted, because that's where dilution and balance come into things. The longer we're going to stir a cocktail, the more dilution occurs. Now we're going to talk about making the dry martini, and guess what? Everything's pretty much exactly the same, apart from those ratios. Like I said, a good place to start for this is the 5-to-1 ratio, and as a reminder, that's 2.5 ounces of London dry gin, half an ounce of dry vermouth. You're going to add those vermouth first into the mixing glass, add your gin, top with ice as much as you can fit in there, as much as you have available. Stir it until that ice starts to feel like, and again, the ice should never ideally be fully submerged. As you start to feel that ice loosen and start to float a little bit, that's always going to be a good indication, if you had it packed early on, that you're getting ready to the martini be complete. You're going to pour it in there, you're going to garnish, and this time you might want to garnish with an olive instead of the twist. Or hey, be greedy, have both. Go for the olive and twist, because who says you can't have both? Go out there, try them. I would say start with a classic. You always got to start with a classic. Go for the 2-to-1. Then maybe for your next order, go for a wet martini. Ask for a 50-50. Ask for that dry one. Dry, but with vermouth. Like I said, it's a hard cocktail to get into, but the rewards are massive. Watch this video, go out, order, make one for yourself, come back, say, hey, guess what? This is my favorite order of martinis. We love to hear from you guys. And I think I've earned not just my dry martini, but my wet one. Cheers.